Junior radar technician Zix was having the most boring shift of his career at Space Station Nexus-9. 4 tentacles tapping impatiently on the console, third eye drooping with fatigue, he monitored the vast emptiness of Sector 7G for the 4th consecutive cycle. Another thrilling day in the glamorous life of a radar tech, Zix muttered to himself, voice dripping with sarcasm. Watch the screen notify command if anything appears, don't touch the fancy buttons. Repeat until your brain liquefies. The Galactic Union had maintained this outpost for over 3 centuries without a single notable incident. It was located in what stellar cartographers diplomatically called the absolute middle of nowhere, far from established trade routes and known civilization. Zix slurped loudly from his nutrient pouch, deliberately making the most annoying sound possible since no supervisor was around to reprimand him. As he tilted his head back to drain the last drops, the radar console emitted a sound he'd never heard before. Ting! Zix nearly choked. He scrambled upright, all 3 eyes widening as he stared at the display. There it was, a small blip at the very edge of the radar's range, moving steadily toward the station. Computer, identify approaching vessel, Zix commanded, suddenly remembering his training. Unknown vessel configuration. No match in database. That was impossible. The Galactic Union had catalogued every species with spacefaring capabilities. Even the reclusive crystallids of the Andromeda Nebula, who considered talking to other species a form of blasphemy, were in the database. Zix pressed the communication button. Senior Officer Krax, we have an unidentified vessel approaching from Sector 7G. Krax's annoyed voice crackled through the speaker. Impossible. Run a diagnostic. Your equipment is malfunctioning again. But sir, did you spill nutrient soup on the console like last time? Because I'm not filling out another equipment damage report. No sir. Is this like when you thought you detected a space whale that turned out to be solar interference? Zix's skin flushed a deep embarrassed purple. This is different, sir. The signal is consistent and growing stronger. A heavy sigh came through the speaker. Fine, I'll be there in 10 minutes. Don't touch anything, don't even breathe on anything. While waiting for Krax, Zix studied the approaching signal. Whatever it wasn't very large. Smaller than standard Union transport vessels. It was moving at a decent speed but nothing extraordinary. Most puzzling of all, it emitted no recognition signals whatsoever. When Senior Officer Krax finally arrived, taking 15 minutes instead of the promised 10, he didn't even glance at Zix. His attention went straight to the radar screen, 6 eye stalks extending for a better look. Krax hummed, which in supervisor speak meant I see the problem but don't want to admit you were right. See? Zix said, it's not in the database. Krax's tentacles danced across the control panel, running every identification protocol. His brow ridge furrowed deeper with each failed attempt. There's something familiar about this configuration, Krax muttered. Something from the old archives maybe. The radar pinged again, louder this time. The vessel had just crossed into the middle detection range. Sir, Zix ventured, should we alert command? Krax's skin turned a contemplative shade of green. Let's not be hasty, probably just some smuggler with a disguised ship signature. But as they watched, the blip drew closer, and the computer finally displayed a tentative match, labeled with a classification that made both aliens freeze in disbelief. That's impossible, Krax whispered. There on the screen, flashing with low confidence but unmistakable, was the classification human vessel. Zix felt his third heart skip a beat. But humans are just legends, aren't they? We should consult the historical archives, Zix suggested, as Krax continued to stare at the radar in disbelief. The what now? Krax blinked all 6 eyes in succession. The historical archives. You know that place with all the old information nobody ever visits, down on level 7? Krax scoffed. I know what the archives are. I'm just shocked you do. I get bored on night shifts, Zix admitted with a shrug that rippled across his tentacles. Sometimes I read. 15 minutes later, they were descending into the least visited section of Nexus-9. The elevator creaked ominously as it dropped below the standard operational levels, the air becoming noticeably dustier with each floor. Has anyone actually been down here in the last decade? Krax asked, wiping grime from his breathing apparatus. The system logs show the last visit was 47 years ago, Zix replied. Someone named Commander Plex came down to retrieve what they called vintage entertainment modules. Ah yes, Plex. Always had a thing for ancient alien pornography. The elevator doors opened with a concerning groan to reveal a vast chamber filled with data storage units and holographic displays covered in protective dust shields. The only illumination came from the emergency lighting strips along the floor, casting everything in an eerie blue glow. This place gives me the creeps, Krax muttered. Wait until you meet Vela. Who's Vela? As if on cue, a voice echoed through the chamber. Visitor detected. State your purpose. Zix stepped forward. It's Zix from Radar. I brought Senior Officer Krax to consult about humans. A low hum filled the room as ancient machinery stirred to life. A holographic projection flickered before solidifying into the image of an elderly alien with far too many appendages and spectacles perched on what appeared to be a nose, if noses were typically located on the back of one's head. "Ah, young Zixie," the hologram croaked. "Back so soon, and you've brought a friend." Krax leaned toward Zix. "What in the 7 moons is that?" "That's Vela, the Archive's AI interface. She's modeled after the station's first historian. A bit eccentric, but she knows everything." "Did someone say humans?" Vela suddenly shouted, causing both aliens to jump. Oh my, how exciting. I haven't had a query about humans in calculating 173 years. Krax cleared his throat. "We need information about human vessels. One appears to be approaching the station." Vela's holographic form spun in 3 complete circles before stopping abruptly. "Impossible. Humans are mythological creatures, like unicorns, or efficient bureaucracy." "Nevertheless," Zix insisted, "our radar shows a vessel matching human configurations approaching Nexus-9. Vela's expression shifted from disbelief to giddy excitement. "Well then, let me tell you everything we know about these fascinating creatures of legend." The central holographic display activated, showing a crude representation of a bipedal being. "Humans," Vela began, her voice taking on a scholarly tone, "are said to be carbon-based lifeforms originating from a planet called Earth, or Dirt, as it translates in modern galactic standard." The image rotated, highlighting various anatomical features. "Note the complete lack of sensible adaptations," Vela continued. "Only 2 eyes, 2 arms, no protective exoskeleton, and a completely exposed nervous system they try to protect with artificial coverings called clothes. Absolutely preposterous design. They look so inefficient," Krax remarked. "Oh, incredibly inefficient," Vela agreed enthusiastically. "But according to legend, what they lack in sensible biology, they make up for in sheer baffling unpredictability." The hologram shifted to show various scenes, a human lifting something heavy, another creating fire, a third consuming what appeared to be toxic substances. Humans were reportedly capable of ingesting substances that would kill most species, surviving in environments from freezing to scorching, and creating tools from virtually anything, Vela explained. Early galactic explorers claimed humans could repair complex machinery with primitive materials like duct tape and something called WD-40. "That's clearly exaggerated," Krax scoffed. "Of course it is," Vela agreed. "Humans are primarily fictional creatures used to frighten young larvae into proper behavior. Finish your nutrient paste or the humans will get you. That sort of thing." Zix wasn't convinced. "But if they're fictional, why do we have radar configurations for their ships?" Vela's hologram flickered thoughtfully. "Well, there were those unconfirmed reports from the Centauri sector about 600 years ago. A small group claiming to be humans requested admission to the Galactic Union." "What happened to them?" Zix asked. "According to the archives, they were denied entry for failing to provide sufficient evidence of stable civilization. The Admission Council cited their concerning history of self-destructive tendencies and alarming reliance on explosions as a solution to technical problems. So they could be real," Zix pressed. "If they were," Vela said suddenly serious, "you should be concerned. Legends say humans possess a terrifying quality called adaptability. While other species evolve over millennia to suit their environments, humans simply change their environments to suit themselves. Most disturbing." The central display shifted to show ancient footage of primitive human habitats in various environments: deserts, jungles, tundra, even underwater structures. Galactic philosophers theorized that if humans existed and advanced technologically, they would either destroy themselves or become one of the most formidable species in the universe, Vela continued. Their creativity is supposedly matched only by their capacity for both self-destruction and survival. The archive suddenly pinged with an alert, causing Vela's hologram to flicker. "Oh my," she said. "It seems your mystery vessel has entered the station's perimeter defense scanning range. We're receiving preliminary lifeform readings." A new hologram appeared, showing a scan of the approaching ship. Inside was a life sign reading that matched perfectly with the archival human data. Krax's face paled to a sickly yellow. "Great Gorgon's tentacles," he whispered. "The legends are real. I should probably notify command now, sir," Zix suggested. "Yes," Krax nodded absently, still staring at the scan. Tell them we're about to make first contact with a myth." As they hurried back to the elevator, Vela called after them. Don't forget, they're supposedly obsessed with consuming a bitter stimulant called coffee, and respond positively to something called pizza. It could save your lives. The elevator doors closed on Vela's final warning. And whatever you do, don't mention something called TikTok. The archives are unclear why, but it appears to trigger extreme emotional responses. By the time Zix and Krax returned to the command level, Nexus-9 had descended into controlled chaos. News of the approaching human vessel had spread faster than a Rigelian stomach virus at an all-you-can-eat buffet. Attention all personnel, blared the station-wide announcement system. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Mythological entity encounter protocol now in effect. The problem, as Zix quickly discovered, was that nobody actually knew what the mythological entity encounter protocol entailed. The last time it had been updated was 247 years ago, when a space traveler claimed to have seen a dragon that later turned out to be a gas cloud with unusual bioluminescent properties. Station Commander Grex, a squat 8-limbed bureaucrat with perpetually furrowed brow ridges, had established an emergency command center in the main atrium. When Zix and Krax arrived, Grex was surrounded by a dozen frantically gesticulating officers. You two, Grex bellowed, pointing multiple appendages in their direction. Explain how we missed a supposedly extinct species until they were practically knocking on our airlock. Krax pushed Zix forward. Junior Technician Zix detected the anomaly, Commander. Yes, Zix stammered. The vessel doesn't broadcast any standard identification signals, so our systems didn't flag it until visual confirmation matched ancient records. Commander Grex's eye stalks twisted into what might have been either deep contemplation or severe indigestion. And you're certain it's human? 97% probability based on archive data, Zix confirmed. Fantastic, Grex muttered. Just what I needed during evaluation season. A mythological crisis. Around them, the station's crew was responding with varying degrees of panic and fascination. A group of xenobiologists were arguing loudly about human dietary requirements. They consume solid matter. We need to synthesize something called hamburger. No. The archives say they require a liquid called beers to function properly. You're both wrong. They photosynthesize through those weird patches of fur on their heads. Meanwhile, the security team was reviewing ancient human combat footage with expressions of horror. They just punch each other with their actual limbs. Barbarians. Look at this primitive weaponry. Is that a projectile launcher? How inefficient. According to this, they consider something called Chuck Norris's to be their ultimate warrior. We should prepare anti-Norris countermeasures immediately. Commander Grex slammed a tentacle on the central console, silencing the room. Enough speculation. We need facts and a coherent plan. The vessel will dock in approximately 40 minutes. Lieutenant Plax, what's our diplomatic protocol here? Lieutenant Plax, the station's diplomatic officer, looked up from her datapad with an expression of pure dread. Well, sir, according to galactic regulations, humans are classified under Appendix Z, mythological, extinct or fictional entities. The protocol simply states, and I quote, "Good luck with that." A collective groan filled the atrium. Wonderful, Grex sighed. What about their communication systems? Can we establish contact? The communications officer, a tall reed-like being named Quix, shook his head. Their vessel is responding to our hails, but they're using an ancient format. We're still decoding it, but it appears to be something called FM radio. What about their ship capabilities? Grex turned to the tactical display. Are they armed? The tactical officer, a silicon-based lifeform who went by Rocky, for obvious reasons, gestured to the holographic projection of the approaching vessel. Difficult to say, Commander. The ship appears to be, well, there's no diplomatic way to put this. It looks like it was assembled from spare parts and optimism. The hologram rotated, showing a vessel that indeed seemed to defy conventional design logic. It was asymmetrical, with obvious patch jobs on the hull, mismatched thrusters, and what appeared to be a bumper sticker reading "My other ship is a Death Star." That can't possibly be spaceworthy, Krax muttered. And yet, Rocky countered, it's traveled through 3 systems to get here. Commander Grex rubbed his eye stalks. So we have a possibly dangerous mythological species approaching in a ship that shouldn't function, using communication technology older than my grandmother, and our official protocol is good luck. Have I missed anything? They're requesting permission to dock, sir, Quix announced suddenly. We've established basic communication. The human says its name is Captain Mac Fletcher of the independent freight vessel Hold My Beer. The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. Hold my beer, Zix repeated. Is that a ritual invocation? Vela's voice suddenly crackled through Zix's personal communicator. It's a human expression indicating someone is about to attempt something inadvisable yet potentially impressive. Most fascinating. Commander Grex straightened to his full height, which was still rather unimpressive. Well, we are a Galactic Union outpost, and our mandate includes peaceful contact with all sentient species, even supposedly fictional ones. Grant them docking permission, but implement quarantine protocols. Security team, be present but non-threatening. First contact specialists, do we have any of those? Nobody raised a hand, appendage or pseudopod. Fine, Zix, you discovered them. You're now our human expert. Congratulations on your promotion. Zix's complexion paled. But Commander, I only read a few That's more than anyone else here. Find appropriate welcoming rituals, and someone please synthesize this coffee substance. If the legends are true, we may need it as a peace offering. As the crew scattered to prepare, Zix caught sight of the vessel through the atrium's viewport. It was now close enough to see with unassisted vision, a patchwork construction of metal and composite materials that had no business traversing the void of space. Yet there it was, defying physics and common sense alike. Docking initiated, announced the automated system. Vessel hold my beers connecting to airlock 7. Zix felt all three of his hearts pounding as he hurried toward the designated meeting point. The station's artificial gravity seemed heavier than usual, or perhaps that was just the weight of being suddenly responsible for humanity's reintroduction to galactic society. Don't worry, Crack said, falling into step beside him. If the human tries anything hostile, security has orders to politely vaporize it. That's not as reassuring as you might think, Zix replied. They arrived at airlock 7 just as the docking sequence completed. A collection of nervous staff had gathered, including security officers with barely concealed weapons, medical personnel with every scanning device the station possessed, and one confused maintenance worker, who thought he was there to fix a plumbing issue. The airlock status indicator shifted from red to green, pressure equalized. The inner door began to cycle open. Remember, Commander Grex whispered to the assembled crew, no sudden movements, no threatening gestures, and nobody mentioned TikTok, whatever that is. The door completed its cycle with a pneumatic hiss, revealing the entrance to the connecting corridor. For a moment nothing happened. Then, footsteps echoed from within the passage. Firm, confident and undeniably bipedal, a figure emerged from the shadows. Huh, said the human, surveying the welcoming committee with obvious amusement. You guys look exactly like the drawings in our old history books. Neat. Standing in the airlock doorway was a creature that simultaneously matched and defied all the archive descriptions. Captain Mac Fletcher stood approximately 1.8 meters tall on two legs that looked incapable of providing adequate stability. The human had the predicted 2 arms, 2 eyes, and concerning lack of protective exoskeleton. What the archives hadn't conveyed was the casual confidence with which this supposedly fragile being carried itself. Captain Fletcher wore what appeared to be a patchwork flight suit with numerous pockets, zippers, and inexplicable decorative elements. A faded patch on the shoulder read NASA, while another showed a smiling cartoon Earth giving a thumbs up with the phrase, "We haven't killed ourselves yet." Atop the human's head sat a battered cap with Galaxy's okayest pilot emblazoned across the front. "Hi there," Fletcher said, raising a hand in what the archives identified as a wave, apparently not the aggressive gesture some security officers interpreted it as, judging by the way they immediately raised their weapons. "Whoa, easy with the disintegrators, folks. I'm just here to trade and maybe use your bathroom. Space coffee goes right through, you know what I mean." Commander Grex stepped forward, all 8 limbs arranged in the formal galactic greeting posture. "On behalf of the Galactic Union, I, Commander Grex of Space Station Nexus-9, welcome you, human." Fletcher grinned. "You said human like you're still not sure I exist." "Don't worry, I get that a lot." Zix couldn't help himself. "Are you really human, from Earth? The legends say your species was denied galactic membership centuries ago." "Legends, huh?" Fletcher scratched at the hair on his face, a beard according to archive terminology. "Yeah, that sounds about right. The famous Proxima Centauri incident of 2279. Our first official contact went, let's say, not great. Something about our ambassador accidentally setting fire to the Galactic Council's sacred meditation garden while trying to light a cigarette." Fletcher shrugged. "After that diplomatic disaster, humanity figured we'd be better off doing our own thing in the backwaters of the galaxy. We've been out there colonizing what you folks call uninhabitable death zones for the past few centuries. Commander Grex's eye stalks twitched nervously. And you've come to Nexus-9 for what purpose exactly? Trade, repairs, and updated star charts, Fletcher replied casually, stepping further into the station and glancing around with obvious curiosity. My navigation system is running on data that's at least 50 years old. Nearly flew into an asteroid field that definitely wasn't there last time I checked. The assembled aliens watched in fascination as Fletcher moved with that peculiar bipedal gait. Several scientific officers were frantically recording every movement. Is it true, one brave xenobiologist blurted out, that humans can ingest substances that would kill most sentient species? Fletcher laughed. Depends on the human and the substance, but yeah, we've got pretty robust systems. My great-grandfather supposedly drank something called Tesco Value Vodka and survived, though family legend says he couldn't see colors for a week afterward. And can you really repair complex technology with primitive adhesives? Asked another curious officer. You mean duct tape? Sure, when necessary. Fletcher patted a silver roll attached to his belt. Never leave home without it. Fixed my life support with this and a plastic straw last month. The scientific officers gasped in a mixture of horror and admiration. But the most important question, Zix found himself saying, is whether you really drink coffee. Fletcher's eyes lit up. You know about coffee? Oh man, please tell me you have some on this station. I've been drinking my own recycled and reprocessed supply for 2 months, and it's starting to taste like the wrong end of a propulsion system. Commander Grex gestured to an aide who nervously presented a container of steaming black liquid that the synthesizers had produced based on archive specifications. Fletcher took it, sniffed cautiously, then took a small sip. The human's face went through a remarkable series of expressions before settling on something between amusement and gratitude. This tastes like someone described coffee to someone who described it to someone else who then tried to make it with engine coolant and optimism. But it's still the best cup I've had in weeks. Thanks. As the initial tension began to dissipate, Commander Grex suggested moving to the station's conference room for more formal discussions. As they walked, Fletcher continued to be bombarded with questions from curious staff. Is it true humans only sleep for part of each day cycle? Yes, typically about 8 hours. Do you really communicate by vibrating air rather than using telepathy or chemical signals? Last I checked, yeah, archives indicate humans reproduce sexually rather than through spore dispersal or budding. Is this correct? I'm not discussing my reproductive methods in a hallway, thanks. By the time they reached the conference room, a small parade of fascinated aliens had formed behind them. Fletcher seemed to take it in stride, occasionally waving at particularly awestruck onlookers. Inside the conference room, the human settled into a chair that was clearly not designed for bipedal anatomy, somehow making it work through what appeared to be sheer stubborn determination. So, Fletcher said, placing the now empty coffee container on the table, I imagine you have questions about why humans have suddenly reappeared after centuries of self-imposed isolation. The thought had crossed our minds, Commander Grex admitted. Fletcher leaned back in the uncomfortable chair. Simple answer. Resources getting scarce in our little corner of space. The longer answer. Humanity's finally gotten its act together enough that we think we might not embarrass ourselves in front of the galactic community this time around. You've achieved unified planetary governance? Asked the political officer, sounding impressed. Fletcher snorted. Hell no, we're still a mess politically. But we've reached a point where we only threaten to blow each other up instead of actually doing it. Progress, right. The human pulled out a small device and placed it on the table. It projected a holographic map of multiple star systems. Human territories, Fletcher explained, pointing to clusters of green dots. Not much compared to the Galactic Union, but we've made 17 worlds at least partially habitable for human life. Even made friends with a few indigenous species who didn't immediately try to eat us, which we count as a diplomatic win. Zix stared at the map in amazement. Several of those planets were classified in Union databases as extreme environment, unsuitable for colonization. But why come to Nexus-9 specifically? Commander Grex pressed. We're not exactly on any major trade routes. That's exactly why, Fletcher replied. Figured a quiet outpost would be less likely to shoot first and ask questions later when a supposedly mythological species showed up. Plus your location is perfect for accessing the Cygnus trade corridor without dealing with Union customs and their notorious paperwork. Fletcher grinned at their surprised expressions. "Oh yeah, we know about the Union bureaucracy. Some things are legendary even among legends. And you came alone?" Krax asked suspiciously. "No crew, my ship's largely automated," Fletcher explained. "Most human vessels are these days. We're still recovering from population losses during the Mars colony disaster of 2341. Besides, smaller crews mean fewer people to argue with about bathroom schedules." As the questioning continued, Zix noticed something odd about Fletcher's reactions. For a representative of a supposedly fearsome legendary species, the humans seemed utterly unimpressed by the advanced technology around them. While Fletcher was polite and engaging, there was none of the wide-eyed wonder one might expect from a primitive species encountering superior civilization. In fact, Zix realized with a start, Fletcher occasionally glanced at certain station systems with what could only be described as bemused tolerance, the look of someone watching a child proudly demonstrate a crude drawing. It was almost as if Zix's train of thought was interrupted by a violent shudder that ran through the entire station, followed by the lights flickering ominously. "That didn't sound good," Fletcher remarked calmly, while the alien delegation erupted into panic. Commander Grex's communicator buzzed with urgent alerts. "Engineering reports multiple system failures across the station," he announced gravely. "Life support is functioning at reduced capacity." All eyes and various sensory organs turned toward the human. "Don't look at me," Fletcher said, raising both hands defensively. "I just got here." "Convenient timing for a catastrophic system failure," Krax muttered suspiciously. Fletcher sighed. "If I wanted to sabotage your station, I would have just sold you Windows 11. No one understood the reference, but the human's calm demeanor during a crisis was somehow more unsettling than the crisis itself. "Perhaps," Commander Grex suggested carefully, "our guest could return to their vessel while we resolve this technical issue." Fletcher took a long look around at the increasingly panicked staff, the flickering lights, and the visible concern on Grex's face. Then the human did something unexpected. "Or," Fletcher said, standing up and pulling the silver roll of duct tape from their belt, "I could help fix it. Engineering deck is down 3 levels right. I spotted it during our walk. Lead the way." The assembled aliens stared in disbelief. "You want to help us?" Zix asked, confused. Fletcher shrugged. "That's what humans do. We see problems, we fix them, usually with duct tape, WD-40, or if things are really dire, both at once. Now, who's going to show me to your environmental systems before we all start experiencing the joys of vacuum exposure?" The engineering deck of Nexus-9 resembled what Fletcher privately thought of as standard alien panic mode. Lots of frantic movement, blinking lights and high-pitched technical jargon being shouted across the room. The station's chief engineer, a gelatinous blob named Glox who communicated through color patterns rippling across their translucent body, was currently flashing an alarming shade of orange while surrounded by subordinates. "Life support degradation accelerating," announced the station's automated system. "Estimated time to critical failure, 17 minutes. "That's not ideal," Fletcher remarked casually, as Zix led their small group into the chaos. Commander Grex immediately approached Glox, tentacles gesticulating wildly. "Report, what happened?" Glox's body rippled with bands of deep crimson and mustard yellow, which the translator rendered as unknown cascade failure in primary environmental regulation systems. Secondary systems attempting to compensate but showing signs of similar degradation. Tertiary systems non-existent due to budget cuts approved by Station Command last fiscal cycle. Grex's eye stalks drooped noticeably at that last part. The symptoms began approximately 47 seconds after the human vessel completed docking procedures. Glox continued, a suspicious purple hue spreading across their upper hemisphere. "Oh come on," Fletcher groaned. "If I wanted to sabotage your station, why would I still be standing here instead of safely back on my ship?" "Perhaps to witness your handiwork firsthand," suggested Krax. "Or maybe," Fletcher countered, "to help fix a problem I didn't cause because contrary to your legends, humans aren't actually malevolent chaos demons." While they argued, Zix had moved to a diagnostic terminal. "These readings don't make sense," he muttered. "The failure pattern isn't radiating from the docking bay, it's coming from the central cooling system." Fletcher peered over Zix's shoulder at the display, nodding thoughtfully. "Your coolant regulation parameters are going haywire. See those fluctuations? Classic signs of a control system that's fighting against itself." The assembled engineers stared at Fletcher with a mixture of surprise and suspicion. "And how would a human know anything about our advanced thermal regulation systems?" Glock's body pulsed skeptically. Fletcher rolled their eyes. Because heat transfer physics works the same whether you're on Earth or the other side of the galaxy. Your system is basically a fancy refrigerator, and I've fixed plenty of those. Life support degradation at 27%, the computer announced helpfully. Estimated time to critical failure 15 minutes. Look, Fletcher said firmly, you can stand around questioning my motives, or you can let me help before we all experience the joy of hypoxia together. Your choice. Commander Grex wavered visibly before nodding. Show us what you found, Zix. Zix expanded the diagnostic display, revealing complex schematics of the station's cooling system. The central processor is receiving contradictory commands. It's like two different programs are fighting for control. A virus, suggested Krax. More likely a software update gone wrong, Fletcher said, studying the patterns. When was the last system update? Glock's flashed a sheepish blue. Approximately 6 hours ago. Routine maintenance. There's your problem, Fletcher said confidently. New software, old hardware. Tale as old as time. Life support degradation at 35%, the computer interjected. Estimated time to critical failure, 13 minutes. We need to access the primary cooling junction, Zix said urgently. It's in maintenance shaft 7B, which is currently inaccessible, Glox added, turning a morose gray. The shaft sealed automatically when the failure began. Temperature inside has risen to 57 degrees Celsius and climbing. Commander Grex's tentacles twisted anxiously. Can we override the seal? Negative. Safety protocols prevent access until temperature returns to normal range. Catch-22, Fletcher muttered. Can't fix the cooling system because it's too hot, and it's too hot because the cooling system is broken. Life support degradation at 40%. Estimated time to critical failure, 11 minutes. Fletcher looked thoughtful. What about external access? Are there maintenance ports outside the station? Yes, Glox confirmed, but an EVA would take at least 20 minutes to prepare, and we don't have suits designed for human physiology. Fletcher's lips curved into a smile that made several aliens take an instinctive step back. It was the expression of someone who had just been presented with an interesting puzzle, rather than a life-threatening crisis. I have my own EVA suit on my ship, Fletcher said. Custom-made, good for up to 3 hours in vacuum. If someone can guide me through the external layout, I could reach the junction from outside. That's insane, Krax protested. Even if you could reach it in time, the access port requires specific tools to. Fletcher pulled a compact multi-tool from another pocket, universal interface adapter, another thing humans never leave home without. Life support degradation at 47%, estimated time to critical failure, 9 minutes. Decision time, Commander, Fletcher said calmly. Trust the myth or start evacuation procedures. Commander Grex's eye stalks swiveled as he considered the options, then straightened with resolve. Zix escort Captain Fletcher back to their vessel and provide external navigation assistance. Everyone else begin emergency protocols in case this doesn't work. 7 minutes later, Zix watched anxiously through the control room viewport as a small figure in a bulky white EVA suit emerged from the docked human vessel. Fletcher moved with surprising grace in 0G, using maneuvering thrusters on the suit to propel themselves toward the station's outer hull. Still getting used to seeing a biped in space, muttered one of the engineers. Looks so unnatural with just the 4 limbs. How do they even balance with that anatomy? Wondered another. Life support degradation at 65%. Estimated time to critical failure, 5 minutes. Fletcher's voice crackled over the comm system. Approaching junction access port Alpha. This suit's heads-up display is mapping your station structure in real time. Pretty impressive tech, huh? The casual boast about human technology caught Zix off guard. According to the archives, humans were supposed to be primitive compared to Galactic Union species. Reached the junction, Fletcher reported. Beginning access procedure now. Zix, I need those override codes. Zix rattled off the sequence while Fletcher's suited hands worked the external panel. The video feed from Fletcher's helmet showed dexterous manipulation of tools that seemed almost too precise for those blunt human fingers. Life support degradation at 78%. Estimated time to critical failure, 3 minutes. Panel open, Fletcher announced. Oh, I see the problem. Your climate control module has a physical switch that's been corroded in an intermediate position. It's trying to both heat and cool simultaneously. Impossible, Glox flashed indignantly. Our systems are designed with redundant, redundant safeguards, Fletcher interrupted. Except somebody installed this module upside down during your last maintenance cycle. The condensation drip has been falling directly onto the manual override switch for who knows how long. A collective murmur of embarrassment rippled through the engineering team. Life support degradation at 85%. Estimated time to critical failure, 2 minutes. Can you repair it? Commander Grex asked urgently. Already on it, Fletcher replied. The video feed showed human hands working quickly, disconnecting components and rearranging them. At one point Fletcher pulled out the roll of silvery duct tape and began applying it liberally. What are you doing? Glocks flashed in alarm. That primitive adhesive can't possibly. Creating a moisture barrier and securing the connections, Fletcher explained patiently. Sometimes the low-tech solution is exactly what you need. Life support degradation at 90%. Estimated time to critical failure, 1 minute. Everyone watched in tense silence as Fletcher made a final adjustment, then firmly pressed the reset button on the control panel. For 3 excruciating seconds, nothing happened. Then the station's lights stabilized. The alert klaxons fell silent. Environmental systems recalibrating, announced the computer in a decidedly more cheerful tone. Life support restoration in progress. A cheer erupted across the engineering deck. Commander Grex's tentacles performed what might have been a victory dance. Junction sealed and functioning normally, Fletcher reported, closing the access panel. Crisis averted, thanks to good old duct tape and human ingenuity. As Fletcher made their way back to the airlock, Zix couldn't help but notice how the human moved through space with confidence and ease, as if the vacuum was just another environment to be conquered. The legends, it seemed, had barely scratched the surface of what humans were capable of. 20 minutes later, Fletcher returned to the command center, EVA suit removed and that same casual demeanor firmly back in place. The hero's welcome that greeted the humans' arrival was a far cry from the suspicious reception of just hours before. You saved the station, Commander Grex acknowledged, extending 4 of his 8 limbs in the galactic gesture of deep gratitude. We are in your debt, Captain Fletcher. Just doing what humans do, Fletcher replied with a modest shrug. See problem, fix problem, preferably with duct tape. Nothing special, but the look of amazement on the faces of the station crew suggested they very much disagreed with that assessment. The legends, Zix said quietly. They said humans were adaptable and resourceful, but they didn't mention your willingness to help others at risk to yourself. Fletcher smiled. Yeah, well, legends tend to focus on the flashy stuff. They probably mentioned our wars and weapons, but forgot to add that we're pretty decent folks most of the time. We just happen to be really good at surviving whatever the universe throws at us. A trait the Galactic Union would do well to reconsider the value of, Commander Grex observed thoughtfully. 2 days later, Zix found himself in Nexus-9's observation lounge, watching as Captain Fletcher's ship prepared for departure. The vessel that had once seemed so impossibly crude now appeared to Zix as a testament to human ingenuity, asymmetrical, yes, but purposefully so, with each seemingly random addition serving a specific function. Quite a change in perspective, isn't it? Commander Grex commented, joining Zix at the viewport. Sir, 2 days ago we thought humans were myths, now we're finalizing trade agreements with them, and updating our databases. Indeed, the past 48 hours had transformed Nexus-9. Engineers had enthusiastically adopted the human concept of duct tape, applying it to various repairs with an almost religious fervor. The station's mess hall had attempted to synthesize other human foods beyond coffee, with mixed results. Something called pizza had been particularly popular, despite bearing only a passing resemblance to the authentic item according to Fletcher. I still can't believe the human fixed our environmental systems with adhesive tape and manual adjustments, Zix marveled, which is precisely why the Galactic Council is reconsidering humanity's application for associate membership, Grex replied. Sometimes the simplest solutions evade the most complex minds. Fletcher had spent much of the previous day in conference calls with both human authorities and galactic representatives, laying groundwork for formal diplomatic relations. The negotiations had been surprisingly smooth, aside from an incident where Fletcher had accidentally insulted a Regelian ambassador by offering them a high five. Captain Fletcher is requesting permission to come to the observation lounge before departure, announced the station's communication system. Granted, Commander Grex replied. A few minutes later, Fletcher arrived wearing a fresh flight suit and the same battered cap. Thought I'd say a proper goodbye before heading out. My ship's all loaded up with the supplies you've generously provided. We can hardly call it generosity when you saved all our lives, Grex responded. Fletcher waved dismissively. All part of the service. Besides, these star charts alone are worth the trouble. Going to save me months of blind jumps. Zix had been working up the courage to ask something, and finally blurted out, were you surprised by how we reacted to you? Being treated as a mythological creature, Fletcher chuckled. Not really. We've had a few encounters like this over the years. Some species run away screaming, others try to worship us as gods, a few shoot first and ask questions never. Your reaction was actually pretty measured, all things considered. But why did humans isolate themselves for so long? Zix pressed. The archive suggested your application to join the Galactic Union was rejected, but you never reapplied. Pride mostly, Fletcher admitted with a shrug. That first rejection stung. Humans don't handle rejection well as a species. So we went off to our corner of the galaxy and decided to prove we could make it on our own. Classic human spite project that lasted a few centuries longer than intended. And now? Commander Grex asked. Now we've grown up a bit, realized the galaxy's big enough for everyone, even species that solve problems differently. Fletcher grinned. Plus we've got things to trade that we think the Union might value. Like what? Zix asked curiously. Problem solving under constraints, creative approaches to survival, making do with limited resources. Fletcher tapped the side of his head. The human speciality is adapting and improvising, not building perfect systems that never fail. We expect things to break and figure out how to fix them with whatever's available. A valuable perspective indeed, Grex acknowledged. Also, Fletcher added with a smirk, we've perfected entertainment. Wait until the Union gets a load of human music and movies. Cultural exchange is going to be our secret weapon. A notification chimed on Fletcher's wrist device. That's my departure window. Time to get moving if I want to make the rendezvous with our diplomatic vessel. Will you be coming back to Nexus-9? Zix asked, surprised by how much he hoped the answer would be yes. Count on it. I've been designated as the human liaison to this sector, which means you'll be seeing plenty of the hold my beer in your future. Fletcher's expression turned mischievous. Fair warning, next time I might bring actual beer. For scientific exchange purposes, of course. As they walked Fletcher back to the airlock, Zix noticed how differently the station crew reacted to the human now. Where there had been fear and suspicion, there was now curiosity and respect. Several engineers even approached to ask last-minute questions about duct tape applications. At the airlock, Fletcher paused. Oh, almost forgot. Got something for you, Zix. The human reached into a pocket and pulled out a small object, a roll of miniature duct tape. Station emergency kit. Human style, never know when you might need it. Zix accepted the gift with all three hearts swelling with unexpected emotion. I thank you, Captain. Just Fletcher to friends, the human replied with a wink. See you around Space Station. With that Fletcher disappeared into the airlock. Minutes later they watched from the command center as the improbable vessel detached from the station and fired its mismatched thrusters. Nexus-9, this is Hold My Beer requesting departure clearance. Fletcher's voice came over the comm. Clearance granted, Captain Fletcher, Commander Grex replied formally. The Galactic Union thanks you for your assistance and looks forward to further cooperation with humanity. Roger that, setting course for the diplomatic rendezvous, try not to break anything else before I get back. The ship's engines flared brighter, and the vessel that shouldn't have been spaceworthy accelerated smoothly away from the station, soon becoming just another point of light among the stars. Do you think it will work? Zix asked quietly. Humans joining the galactic community after all this time. If there's one thing I've learned in the past few days, Commander Grex replied thoughtfully, it's to never underestimate human adaptability. As if to punctuate that statement, Fletcher's ship suddenly executed an elaborate spiral maneuver before disappearing into hyperspace, a completely unnecessary flourish that was somehow perfectly in character. Zix fingered the small roll of duct tape in his pocket and smiled. The universe had just become a lot more interesting. Back in the archives, Vela updated the entry on humans. The new entry began, humans carbon-based bipedal species known for solving complex problems with simple solutions, surviving in environments where they have no business surviving, and an inexplicable emotional attachment to adhesive products. Approach with curiosity rather than fear. Current status, no longer mythological, and in a separate note, visible only to her own awareness, she added, a fascinating species. The legends didn't do them justice. Recommend keeping duct tape in stock at all times.